Allow me to begin by thanking you for honoring me with your presence. I'm here to share the story of how I at last came to embrace my humanity after a lifetime of struggle. The story of how I finally shed the notion that I required any sort of divine fine-tuning to be a whole, authentic, actualized being, a real person. The true me hidden deep within the sin-damaged shell I believed I was. Freeing myself from religion was a process that took many years and involved a number of different stages. For the most part, it was far from easy. It was a complicated and delicate, time-consuming affair, like going through a tricky surgery to have foreign objects removed safely from my confused mind and broken heart. The thing is, you've had those foreign objects inserted into you at a young age, before you're even fully conscious of yourself as a person, before you know what's yours and what isn't. As the years go by, the objects never feel foreign. They feel like they're supposed to be there. Of course you need them. Why would they be there otherwise? And almost everyone around you has them too. The whole world, as you know it, has them. Faith, God, religious commands, sacred messages from beyond, the unfathomable other, the immaterial soul. Without them, nothing would make sense, we're told. Without them, we wouldn't fully exist. All of these things have been mysteries for so long that questioning them is extremely difficult. It would be like thinking that the sky isn't blue. It becomes entwined with the very fabric of your life, with the essence of the universe itself. Questioning them would be like questioning your own existence. What could be more fear-inducing? As the New Testament states, whoever does not believe is already dead. Whoever does not believe is condemned already. Whoever does not believe isn't truly human. You lose your ability to question what you've been told, what's been repeated over and over again, and has become socially self-evident. I'll venture to say that this loss is an unconscious form of self-preservation. At the very heart of religion is a divisiveness without which religion couldn't sustain itself, the dichotomy between this world and the other world. Over the course of human history, a multitude of religious traditions have formulated these two dimensions in a variety of ways, but in some form or other, they're always there, butting heads. Even in systems that are characterized by the profoundly dualistic nature of the Judeo-Christian tradition, one can discern a problem. Human beings need some type of cosmic assistance or mystical understanding to be liberated from this world. We need a supreme awareness. We need to rise above something or other. When I was still only a child, I learned that religion was formidable, pervasive, and seemingly inescapable. It was of capital importance and a source of tremendous divisiveness. It was the operatic stage upon which a violent tragedy was both enacted and amplified. My father battling my mother's dangerous, newfound evangelical faith as a threat to the control he always exerted. My mother refusing to relinquish it despite the increasing abuse she endured. A personal relationship with Jesus had freed her from the despotic power of the Catholic Church and its priesthood. It comforted her. It gave her life meaning. The evangelical Baptists taught that human beings didn't have to do anything, well, almost. okay in the eyes of the Christian God. The one thing you had to do was believe in Jesus. If you've been brought up to believe that something is terribly wrong with you, inherently wrong with you, and a group of people offers a solution that looks better than the solution you've been taught was the only possible one, it can often feel like you found an escape hatch, and you turn the handle as fast as you can. This worked for my mother. It made sense to her. I myself experienced more and more problems with this alternative solution, however. As I wrote in my book, There's a Hula Girl on my dashboard, How I Left Faith Behind and Embraced Life. I'd always been sensitive to the spiritual side of life and to all that lay beyond the surface of what could be perceived with the senses, to mystery and magic. The bond I shared with my mother was extremely strong, and it was no surprise that I chose to walk along with her on the evangelical path. I was baptized by immersion when I was 16. I remember clutching my little Gideon New Testament with a green cover like it was a priceless, fascinating treasure. It held all the answers, I was told. It showed you everything God wanted, and what else could you possibly need to know. There wasn't anything else. No other true comfort. That path didn't work out for me, though. Whereas my mother experienced it as a blessing, it would cause me nothing but misery. According to the Baptists, you either had Jesus or you didn't, and woe to you if you didn't. I quickly figured out that I was too weird to be saved, too sad, and I asked way too many questions. It was supposed to be easy to have Jesus. All you had to do was accept him in your heart. Well, I wasn't doing this right, apparently. Faith wasn't enough in my case. Something vital was missing, and damned if I knew what it was, because only faith was necessary. Belief was what counted. Works was a dirty word. Obviously, there was something hopelessly wrong with me. I was one of those vessels fit for destruction, or what the hell ever, made to be destroyed. This filled me with a despair I can hardly describe. In addition, it didn't seem to me that God had much interest in the bulk of humankind, since the Bible said that most of us wouldn't, alas, qualify for everlasting joy. To quote Hula Girl, I saw heaven as a giant flashing vacancy sign. Lots of room there, sure. I couldn't understand how escaping God's righteous judgment, thanks to the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, was good news, or a sign of God's tremendous love for me. It was like a magic trick. Sign your name on the dotted line, and the divine frown was transformed into a benevolent smile. The blood of Jesus somehow turned me from the most despicable and disgusting of creatures into a person worthy of God's love. 1 minute I was a criminal, justly condemned to a perpetual damnation, and the next I was sitting in his wondrous kingdom, the word heaven got stamped next to my name, and I was acquitted. How lucky I was. I no longer offended God. No matter how much I tried, I couldn't feel the glorious, hard-won, tender love that was supposed to flow from this legal transaction. Your salvation was assured, but the bulk of what preachers taught was how much you still sucked and didn't actually satisfy God. And as for the rest of the world, well, the vast majority of it was nothing but filth, depraved. Our mortality itself, talk about a no-win situation, is the proof that we're sinners, fallen, in need of salvation. Our mortality is the sign that we disobeyed our Creator, that we sinned, that we're legally indebted. We hadn't even died yet, and we're already dead unless we believe. There's simply no way to get around it. Being human is wrong. Something is missing or broken. I certainly felt broken. At that point in my life, I began to suffer from an acute depression, and I couldn't rejoice always like the true Christians were supposed to do. The situation in my home had deteriorated to such an extent that I retreated deep in the dark shadows of my mind and frequently thought of killing myself. By the time I was 16, my mother, sister, and I had already left home twice. But it was like trying to get out of quicksand. That place would suck you back in. And my mother, who'd been told a million times she'd never make it on her own, who'd been beaten down and terrorized, wasn't able to extricate herself from her codependent relationship with my father. I can understand that. It took me nearly 4 decades to extricate myself from her addiction. As odd as it may seem to say this, rejecting abuse isn't easy, because abuse can disguise itself as a twisted kind of love. It makes you wonder if anything you think is really true. It makes you doubt yourself. It makes you surrender. When I left home at 18, I was in a precarious state of mind. Overt arrangements had been made for me to live with a young pastor and his wife. The night I left, I was exceedingly extremely traumatizing to me. I didn't want to leave, but I couldn't want to stay. What would happen when my father found out? Would he kill my mother? Everything was almost her fault. My distress was such that my mother wound up leaving for the 3rd time, where she went back a week later. I didn't. And very, very slowly, I started to work on the massive knots that prevented me from taking full steps ahead. For a long time, it was more a question of freeing a limb and being able to move a little. The day when I walk on my own. Despite my best efforts, I never quite managed to believe I was acceptable to the evangelical God. I tried to fit the mold, to do and say the right things, whatever those were, and I continued to hope that maybe Jesus loved me. But I never measured up. As I wrote in Louisville, you had better believe the right thing, and believe it the right way. So-and-so was an evangelical, but was it the right kind? Everything and everyone was out to deceive you, to seduce you away from the correct path. You can never forget that this was a fallen world teeming with sinners. You had to reach out to them, and yet you couldn't sympathize with them too much. They could lead you astray. They were the devil's offspring. I spent a lot of time wondering whether that's what I was myself. Few will be saved, I hear again and again. More and more I rebelled against this in my heart. It wasn't just a darn shame. It was horrible. It was unacceptable. Then, confronted by my persistent defiance of miraculous prayer and by my failure to serve up an inspiring praise of the Lord metamorphosis, the pastor and his wife told me the following words. "You're not sure you're saved." We were in the kitchen. I heard the words and felt my heart sink to the ground. It felt, how can I describe the despair that went through me like a barbed mace? Their assessment of my ultimate spiritual fate only confirmed what I already suspected, myself indeed wounded as it was. Nice to have this declared by a knowledgeable authority figure. That's exactly the sort of wise counsel needed to keep suicidal 18-year-olds emotionally and psychologically into agreement. However dreadful this was, I do believe that the pastor and his wife meant well. Within the terrible worldview from which they operated, pointing out I was possibly damned for all eternity was a caring gesture, the sole option they had. Within a more rational worldview, it was and remains a loathsome act of abuse. It was terror-mongering at the most fundamental of levels. The destructive act and abuse of power. Should this be surprising? The dogmatic foundation of evangelical Christianity is abuse of power. Imperfect, finite creatures sinning against the perfect, omnipotent, and omniscient Creator who must be appeased with nothing less than a sacrifice involving the pure, sin-erasing blood of the God who is his absolute equal. This is the core evangelical worldview. Unless human beings believe this, they are unacceptable and inferior. Around a year after I arrived at the pastor's house, I left. When I was 21, I took one of the first steps in the process that would one day culminate in my mental emancipation. With my mother's help, I went to university. This is where I first dared to question everything I'd heard since I was a child. Everything about God, to be more precise. Although I began my studies in communications, I gravitated towards English literature and religious studies. My natural curiosity took over. My hunger for knowledge and understanding led me down avenues that would have once been unthinkable. The more I learned, the more Christian claims to exclusive ownership of the divine were on shaky legs. Weren't the roots of Christianity and Judaism? Perhaps the Jewish religion had a more accurate perception of God. I went to a Reformed synagogue and learned to sight read Hebrew. I went to Sabbath. The rabbis were very kind men. But when I started to question the Christian concept of God, the entire Judeo-Christian worldview began to wobble, and soon I was exploring ideas that were completely foreign to me. I read yet more mountains of books. I studied Buddhism, Taoism. I went to New Age bookstores and gazed at all the previously forbidden things, the statues, the tarot decks, the crystals. I thought it was beautiful and fascinating. I was looking for meaning. I was looking for love. I believed in love. Something was impeding my progress, however. Within me was anger, growing, burning anger at the male Christian God and his entire salvation enterprise. Anger I had turned against myself when I was a depressed teenager was being redirected towards another target. Although I saw this God as despicable and ridiculous, I'm not sure I had stopped believing in him altogether. I'm not sure what I believed precisely. Mostly I was furious at this baby, which I denigrated at every opportunity. In my late 20s, I married a gentle, quiet man with a dry sense of humor. We've been together for 17 years now, and this helped attenuate the pain I was going through. Still, my disgust with this God and his sacrificial bloodlust and incomprehensible messages and fickle, temperamental love was like an ink stain spreading to and obscuring other areas of my existence. I was becoming disillusioned, cynical. If the God of love didn't exist, it seemed to me that nothing could mean anything at all. Life was an absurd joke. I could only agree with the lyrics of Depeche Mode's song Blasphemous Rumors. I think that God's got a sixth sense of humor, and when I die, I expect to find him laughing. That was Depeche Mode. I became a decadent nihilist. Nothing was truly real, including love. Nothing had lasting value. Nothing was worthwhile. What I learned was that life without a divine presence could only be empty, and so it was. I read books like The Dark Side, Thoughts on the Futility of Life, from the Ancient Greek to the Present by Alan R. Pratt. My heart, which had been so tender, was growing out. And yet, despite my bitter thoughts and bleak worldview, somehow I found myself unable to give up, to believe there was no such thing as beauty or love. I couldn't fully convince myself that life was nothing but a ludicrous and cruel charade. Maybe the teachings I've been exposed to were wrong. Deep inside, I still felt that Jesus was the key to love and meaning, that he cared about human beings. I vaguely remembered another kind of Christianity from my university days. I decided to look into this Orthodox Christianity. Here's how I described what happened next in Louisville. The website said that the Orthodox Church was real, the one, the ancient Church of Christ. It was Christianity. I wanted to find out if this was true. I'm here to give Christianity another chance. It didn't seem I'd ever recover from the existential pain at the heart of me unless I reconciled myself with this part of my lifestyle. I was like an archaeologist, determined to uncover treasures from a mound of shattered rocks in the middle of the desert. Not one to give up. I looked for a nearby church in the Yellow Pages. There was one, the Orthodox Church in America. It sounded all right to me, less intimidating than the ethnic churches that were listed in the Orthodox section. I remember that beneath Orthodox Church in America was the word welcome. That word won me over. I was immediately awestruck by the place, by its wondrous, otherworldly tranquility. It was fragrant with a heavy smell of incense, and the rays of the setting sun were shining through the windows and illuminating the golden icons. These icons were everywhere, on every wall, peaceful faces gazing at me. At the front of the church was the altar, which was hidden behind carved golden doors and rows of icons that in the front floor to see. There were no pews, just empty space with large ornate carpets and chairs along the walls. It was all indescribably beautiful. I'd never seen anything like this before. I was mesmerized. This place looked like it had been around forever, and it was so warm, so unlike the stark, austere Baptist church I attended when I was a teenager. In this Orthodox church, I felt safe. All I could think of was, I want to come back here. The next thing I knew, I was an Orthodox Christian, and would remain so for almost a decade. When I returned home the day I first walked into the church, I immediately began reading the book I brought back with me. It was called The Orthodox Way, and had been written by a convert to Orthodoxy, Bishop Alice Spira. What I encountered within the pages of that book turned my life upside down. I stumbled upon a profoundly mystical interpretation of Christianity. God was a lover, not a judge. I had entered a hospital, not a court. I wasn't hopelessly stained or utterly depraved. I was suffering from a deadly illness. Divine love was the medicine that would cure me from my tendency to choose things that led to greater suffering. Jesus hadn't died to satisfy his Father's inexorable judicial requirements. Jesus had tricked death into accepting him, thereby defeating it because he was eternal life incarnate. He'd been a kind of Trojan horse. Human beings had been fooled into believing we could be alive from the ultimate source of life on our own, and Jesus had come to heal us. God wanted to be like us so we could be like him. Our relationship was a synergetic union. Although human beings were creatures, and the divine was the creative agent, humans, in a way, became divine through this interaction with the loving deity. In other words, we were transformed into what we were truly meant to be, incarnations of life and love. This made sense to me. This was a religion of love. This was the love of God. This God was compassionate. He suffered with. He wasn't an unmovable overlord. He was humble. He longed to unite himself to his alien creatures and suffer along with them, to die with us and give us his life force. I was overcome with a desire to console and encourage anyone who'd ever been told they were unworthy of love or somehow beyond redemption. Right from the beginning, it was my magnificent obsession. It was my reason for living. I read practically every Orthodox book I could lay my hands on, piles of monastic texts that extolled radical compassion and justice. Verses like, "The fool says in his heart, there is no God," had to be understood correctly. Who was the fool? I, and only I was. If I failed to honor the divinity who ever crossed my path, that is, if I failed to love him and see the divine essence within them, thereby denying the deity. I threw myself with every fiber of my being to what I now saw as a vocation. I started blogging about my experiences. I was also becoming involved in the Harry Potter fandom. I delighted in dressing up ever since childhood. And let's say Professor Snape was love at first sight for me. If there ever was a book being judged and condemned by its cover, it was him. Indeed, it was shortly after my interest in the Potter story had been sparked that I was drawn back to my quest for divine love. When I first saw Alan Rickman's performance, my instant reaction was to doubt whether Professor Snape was the loathsome, unsaved villain others made him out to be. I began going to Harry Potter conventions. I had my hair cut like the potions master and dyed it black. Draped in those long black robes of his, I went from giving a 2-minute paper while participating in a panel to delivering lectures to a crowd of people who were comforted by what I had to say. I was astonished and bewildered by this. I spoke about Professor Snape, love, hope, and forgiveness through the lens of mystical orthodoxy. I lived to raise up those who'd been put down. I traveled, I wrote books, I burned myself out more than once. I felt unequal to the task, but I gave it my all. I tried to give my best, despite my weaknesses and failings. Actually, here's a picture of me dressed up like him. As you can see, I'm going really high-tech here. I'm going to hold up a piece of eye paper. There you go. This is me dressed up like him. Here's a couple of ones. There you go. So actually I'm dressed down right now because I usually do my lectures dressed up like this. So yeah, I'm dressed down today. So and I would wrap people in those robes because they were extremely comforting to people who had broken hearts. And I had a lot of people cry on me too. And then I came face to face with the dark side of the Orthodox Church. I've been ignorant of the troubles that have been brewing in the Orthodox Church in America for a few years. These troubles were centered around church leadership and financial scandals. It wasn't this that would brought me to the core of my being, however. The attitudes they brought to light did. I had been feeling an increasing amount of anguish because of the divisions between Eastern and Western Christianity. I wanted to reconcile everything somehow. I told our Archbishop that I had desired to be a peacemaker ever since I could remember. And when I tried telling him why, I couldn't continue. My throat clenched and my eyes watered. I was having greater difficulty understanding why people were fighting over how the Eucharist should be prepared, over the filioque. It seemed so trivial, and so many people felt unloved and rejected. Wasn't there more important work to be done? Wasn't the church supposed to be united in love? Then it happened. I discovered that some members of the Orthodoxy believed Western Orthodox, more truly Orthodox, especially converts, didn't know how to fast or pray or do anything properly, and who shouldn't be part of the clergy. I was crushed. It was like a punch to the stomach again. I couldn't comprehend this. I didn't know what to do. Was there divine somewhere else? Where was I supposed to go? As I rode into the door, darkness was around the corner, but this time I didn't lose hope. I was about to go through tremendous changes, but they wouldn't destroy my dedication to life and love. Instead, these changes eventually caused the religious and supernatural frameworks to collapse and enabled me to cherish my humanity, life, and the universe exactly as they are. Disillusion began to set in once more, but there was no bitterness this time, no burning anger. I felt pain and confusion, but I knew love existed and couldn't be extinguished. I started questioning more and more things about the church, the necessity for an all-male clergy, the notion that homosexuality is problematic. To quote Ulador once more, as my disillusionment intensified, I would watch our collection of bejeweled deacons repeat, "Catechumens depart, let no catechumen remain," despite the fact that catechumens didn't leave the service nowadays, and I wonder, what is the point of all this? Father Gillet had once described the Orthodox Church as ossified. I was reaching the same conclusion. Unlike him, though, I walked away from it. I was ready. I had tried to ignore the crushing disappointment I felt when I was confronted with orthodoxy, spiritism, and nationalistic religious tribalism, but no amount of liturgical beauty or wondrous chanting could hide it from me anymore. This religious class system was unacceptable to me. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. It was incomprehensible. As I tried to cope with the momentous changes I was going through, I endured a great deal of inner turmoil. It felt like my identity was disintegrating. What held me together, so to speak, was my conviction that if love wasn't to be found everywhere, it wasn't anywhere. I chose everywhere. I slowly detached myself from formal religion and religious organizations, and I spent a couple of years espousing eclectic syncretism and combining a variety of spiritual outlooks in a novel way. I read, I wrote, I worked through this shift in my understanding of reality. My vision of the divine, the cosmic, unfathomable manifestation of love permeating the whole universe, became so all-encompassing, so nebulous, so undefined, that it progressively vanished. The otherworldly force was being absorbed by the physical universe. For a while I put myself in neutral and identified as an agnostic. There was much I needed to figure out. I'd been reading books like Jesus Wars, how 4 patriarchs, 3 queens, and 2 emperors decided that Christians would believe for the next 1,500 years by Philip Gentles, The Incredible Shrinking Son of Man by Robert M. Price, The Gnostic Gospels by L. Agels. And again I started questioning the truths I'd been taught. Only this time, the questions I asked were much more radical, and I approached them from another angle. I'd venture to say that it was beginning to dawn on me that I'd always been a humanist. The need for another worldly power was fizzling out, and my belief in its existence was melting away in the light of all that I was learning. I read that fearsome book, The God Delusion. I read The Soul Fallacy, what science shows we gain from letting go of our soul beliefs by Julian Mussolini. And speaking of science, for the first time in my life, it was coming to my rescue, as it were. I read Why Evolution is True by Jerry Coyne, and Undeniable by Bill Nye, and The Demon Not to War with Science as a Candle in the Dark by Thomas Sagan. At first, a world without religion seemed disorienting, but the more I grasped mechanisms at work in natural selection and evolution, the more wondrous and dazzling the universe became. Although the world didn't have any supernatural meaning, I realized that I could give it my own human meaning. I was starting to experience a sense of freedom and dignity I'd never known before. I was embracing all facets of myself, including my non-binary and fluid gender expression. It was, in fact, one of the first things I did, one of the first taboos I broke. This had been an issue for me ever since adolescence. I didn't have to fit into artificial categories designed to make the world feel safer, more controllable, less chaotic, less unpredictable. I no longer had to live my life according to the precepts of fairy tale deities who forbid people from mixing wool with linen. I'm a boyish girl and a girlish boy. I've always loved bringing things together and blurring lines. For much of my existence, I'd been under the misapprehension that I was incomplete, or not fully human, or somehow alien, unless I received an infusion of supernatural life, of so-called perfection, from a great otherness that resided in an ungraspable beyond. My humanity, my emotions, my love were never good enough on their own. I'd at last discovered that they were good enough. There was always room for growth and learning, but my humanity was inherently good enough. The beauty I'd looked for with such ardor and desperation had been right there all along. Now I was face to face with my humanity, with my material being, and I knew it was enough. It was what was real. This tumultuous, beautiful, marvelous, fragile world was enough, and I was enough. The wonder I'd searched for was in my bones and brain and in everything around, and in the entire universe. I would never be a part of the world. What an amazing kinship. I found it more and more astounding that some people believe our rising from the primordial soup was dominion. Why? How could it be dominion? What was wrong with it? There was no deity I had to please. No more agonizingly asking myself if I pleased it or not, or truly returned its supreme love or not, while suspecting I probably didn't because I couldn't, it wasn't humanly possible or humble. I no longer had to beg for its assistance or favor, and constantly wondered if the motivations behind my request were pure and selfless. Was the cause of distress actually divine correction, or a test to see whether I really trusted or loved it, or a remedy, or who knew what, because of the divine work in mysterious ways? No more of that unnecessary, abusive nonsense. Primordial soup? That sounds much better. Knowing that there was any spirit floating inside me or above me was also liberating. I wasn't reduced to matter. I was honoring what I was, accepting my fragility and fleeting existence. More than anything, I felt gratitude and joy. One of the reasons I wanted an afterlife was to continue learning and loving. The thought that all I was composed of would soon form other things, to me that was loving and learning. There was no problem. I didn't need to be conscious of whatever would come next. I'm grateful for my life. It's enough. More than enough. It is what it is. And to desire something else would be pointless and a waste of time. And so I don't regret anything that's happened to me so far. What I feel most of all is joy. And what I want to do is share this post-religious joy of mine, this peace and wonder and gratitude. I'm not much of a debater. There are many who do this extremely well and skillfully. My next book, which is going to be published by Atheist Public, will be entitled Atheist and Tiki Hour, The Guide to a Secular Blast. I want to tell those who are on the verge of crossing over from religion to humanity, it's going to be okay. I'm here to tell that it's not the end. Life without religion isn't empty or terrible. I'm a joyful atheist, and I'm going to share my joy. Thank you. Sure.
It sounds like you've tried a number of religions.
I have.
So, how many?
How many? My goodness. Well, most branches of Christianity, I would say, because I was baptized Catholic, and born in Quebec. It was pretty much standard at the time. And then I was baptized by immersion when I was 16 with the evangelicals. Then I was christenated by the Orthodox when I was in my early 30s. I studied Buddhism and Taoism. Actually, Taoism is a philosophy. I consider it more as a philosophy than a religion. It's something that I still that I find very inspiring. I went to Reform Synagogue. Let's see. I studied, many of the New Age things. When they had the creative visualization, all this stuff, and it was. It's something that I still remember with a great deal of fun. A lot of times you hear people putting down the New Age movement, but I consider it the gateway to liberation for me because it was so, coming from my previous background, it was my gosh, it was entering the world of the forbidden. Oh my gosh, terrible death, Satan. So it was just really daring to touch things you're not supposed to be touching, exploring things you're not supposed to touch, psychology and this and that, and ooh, witchcraft. And actually, Wicca is another thing that I explored for a while there. I have many dear friends in the Harry Potter fandom, amazingly, who are Wiccans, or the odds. And there were quite many beautiful things about that too. When I look back on all those experiences, I try to distill the best of them, to live without regrets. Like I said, I'm very grateful for everything I've experienced, even the things that were more painful. A lot of times you hear, I've seen this on my Twitter feed, I've seen many odd things on my Twitter feed, and some of the things that come up sometimes is some people tell atheists, oh, you're not in a position to talk about religion, you don't know anything about it. Read my previous books, and then you make up your own mind. So I did a thorough exploration before I came to where I was now, but I think I was always operating from that, love of humankind sort of way of thinking, which is why I wandered around quite a lot. Because I can't stand little tribalistic, closed-in groups where there's some people that are in and some people that are out. If there's an out, I'm going to be there, basically. Just you draw a line in the sand and not crossing over with all the people that are left out. I cannot stand people that are left out. So that's what I did again and again until I experienced enough healing, I would say, and trust that the beauty and the love that I was looking for, they did exist, but they didn't have to be this sort of stick-on-a-carrot perfection that's designed to make you suffer. It's okay to be human, to be selfish, to say stupid things. It's okay. It's no problem. So there you go. Does that answer your question?
I've gone through myself. From Jehovah's Witness, and then paganism, and for me, it was just like, oh, what do they not like? Oh, the pagans!
I understand, yeah.
In your, now, my experience with it was basically also seeing that they were actually kind of struggling. Oh my God, tarot! Oh my God, Pitchfork! You're in league with Satan. That helped open up kind of for you the acceptance, kind of just as in the healing process of like acceptance of different views.
For sure. It helped. It helped again in self acceptance.
Right.
Because when you've experienced things where your stamp is put on you, bad, evil, unacceptable, you're not going to make it. Well, there's a great deal of misunderstanding actually about paganism. When you read it, but again, if you operate from a worldview where there's God and there's the devil and demons and all of these things running around waiting to take you over, and you can't trust what you think because even if it sounds good, it's bad too. It's like, oh, it sounds loving, but it really isn't. It doesn't make any sense. You can pick up a book about Wicca or paganism, and they say something very sensible and very beautiful, let's say, and loving and so on, and then you have this other perspective, and they'll say, well, that's actually a suggestion from Satan. It's like you have no sensible anchor. It's completely insane. And of course, you experience that, and you see that it's not true. It's not true. But, I myself, extremely dear friends who are very comforted by this for very intense and personal reasons, are comforted by this. But me, it's just, I'm happier knowing I can leave the house without having to do a little juju dance. You know what I mean there? It's kind of like, I personally, I find that very liberating. You don't have, there's nothing hiding anywhere. You know, if something happens to you, it isn't because you didn't do this, or because you did that, or you didn't put the right intent in it, or you didn't pray to such and such, or even if you did, well, you got some other idea, you know, but it's really good. So, yeah, it's good to be called that all the time. Where you live in, you know, it's amazing, you live in such a safer world, even though you don't believe that, you know, you can't pray to, you know, such and such to stop this earthquake from happening or whatever. I feel much safer, even though I'm like, you know, whatever happens, sometimes it's nothing to do with you. I mean, a lot of times when a bad thing happens to you, maybe it's because of a bad decision you made, but sometimes it's through no fault of your own whatsoever. And you don't have to, you know, dig for some mystical, metaphysical underpinning to this here. You know, you don't have to torture yourself. When I was Orthodox and we approached you have to take the Bible very seriously, right? So, but it was understood in an extremely mystical way. So if you had those Old Testament texts that are really nasty, you know, like my arrows thirsted for blood and all those types of things, you would say, well, you know, the people who were writing about genocide thought they were writing about genocide, but they really weren't. They were actually writing about the inner war going on inside of you, and you know, sometimes God's love, it feels painful because you're struggling with your own wound. You know, it's like putting some type of alcohol on you, and therefore, you're twisting yourself into a pretzel. You know what I mean there? And then you're like, no, it's actually what it says on the tin. It's you know, some group of people going around raping and pillaging and killing everything that they see, and that's exactly what it is. You know, it's because you had to take these things and apply them to yourself, not to other people. It's like a war going on inside you, right? And that was the original intent, although the authors weren't aware of it at the time. So it was very exhausting. It was very exhausting. Does that answer the question? Thank you. Anyone else? Yes?
So you said earlier on that evangelical, your word for your mother, right? You made that comment in passing. And I read your book, and it talks a lot about you and you end up being very pro-humanist. But what I don't get is, what are your thoughts about the organized religion itself? Would you classify yourself as anti-religion, or do you see that there is some value in it for some people?
Well, I don't think that, overall I don't think religion is a good. I think that it's a kind of a prison, and that it actually prevents you from tasting, the joy of this world that we're in and so on. But I'm not the type of, I don't like forcing people to do what they can't or won't do. We try to preserve like a peaceful coexistence as much as possible. There are a lot of people who will put on, I read Faith versus Fact, right, by Professor Korn, which was an incredible book, and I agree with him. Back in the day, when I was going through my own experiences, honestly, they could have produced a body and it wouldn't matter to me. You know what I mean? They could have just produced Jesus. Here it is, dead, and I wouldn't have believed it was real. It's not an easy thing. You know what I mean? Especially when, you think of people that you know and people that you love and you don't agree about something like this, which I think it's very difficult. I don't want to ruin anything, but I still don't think it's good. I'm not going to be someone who says, well, I think that it should go on, it should continue. I don't think, all of the structure and the trappings around it, do we really need to, when you think, for instance, oh, look at the beautiful fall landscape, is it good to think that, the leaves wouldn't be red if it wasn't for elves that come out at night and they paint them red, I mean? Is that good? I don't think that's good, I think that we need to lead people through to come to their own conclusion when they're ready. When you consider that, I do try to find the good whenever possible, even though I kind of disagree with the whole enterprise and being profitable. I don't think it is. I mean, I've been through it, Like I said, I don't regret my previous decisions, because I think it could be pointless to. And when I look at my past, I try to extract whatever good there is in there. But, I wouldn't do it over. I wouldn't do it over. I'm very glad to be where I'm at now. And I mean, I've never felt happier than I feel now, or more at peace than I do now. So that's why, like when I write my next book, I'll just be writing about why I'm happy as an atheist. I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to tell you that I'm happy, because a lot of people seem to think this is impossible. Is there some kind of meme with Oprah saying atheists can be happy or something like that? And I'm like, that's hilarious. I don't understand that. Maybe, we need, happier people bouncing around sometimes. But, I can understand why a lot of people are angry, because, you just have to look at what's going on in the world, and sometimes you're like, this is not good at all. This is really horrible, terrible. Oh my gosh. But, we just have to do our best where we are with what we have, right? So, does that answer your question? Thank you so much. Anything else, everybody?
How old were you when you joined the Orthodox Church?
I was, I think here it was in 2003, so I was around 34, now 46.
That decision surprises me, because you could have done some due diligence about the church.
What's that? Oh, yeah, well, I mean, I was in a really fragile state then. You have to understand that, to me these questions they had to do with, is life worth living, literally, right? And I was basically operating from what I knew. I had this sort of foundation that was there, and, I believed that this stuff was real. So, who's saying the real truth about it? Is there someone out there saying it? So, that was my starting point, basically. And I'm actually thankful that I didn't know the bad things at the start, because honestly, I think it would have felt like the end. I mean, I remember, in fact, and one of the priests, in fact, had quoted this in like some church newsletter or something, telling people, you see this? Remember this, what this person said. These people reject me, I'm going to kill myself. Because it seemed like I found something so beautiful. When these people tell me, that's it, man, what's left? There was just too much baggage, too many wounds. I wasn't ready, right? So, but again, I'm glad for the experience, because now I know I've lived through this and I've learned a whole bunch of things. So, I don't think I would be who I am if I hadn't gone through these things. So it's all good.
Did you finish writing your next book?
No, I'm actually going to start writing it tomorrow.
That's the best time.
I'm going to start writing it tomorrow. I went to the NINE conference in Kitchener in August, and it was fantastic. If you ever get a chance to go to this thing, I highly recommend it. It was my...
You can talk to children. They're the happiest until they're taken to the religious school or the church.
So, it's just like the non-conference was really amazing. If you have a chance to go to this event, I really recommend it. It was my first humanist secular, atheist, whatever. Professor Krauss was there. He was unbelievable. He talked about science. The way he did it, honestly, it was more beautiful than any, or more, it was more wondrous than any sermon I'd ever heard. I was mesmerized by it. Even though sometimes he would lose me because he was, really, he was talking about physics. Everyone was like, oh, what the heck is he talking about? But it was unbelievable. The people were incredibly nice. And I was going somewhere with this, I can't remember. But anyway, that was actually when I met Armin Navabi, who wrote, he's the young man who created the Atheist Republic. And he was one of the speakers that he was unbelievable. So, and he contacted me when I came back home. He said, you want to publish your next book with us? So I said, sure. sure. So that's what I'll be doing next. So for the fall and beginning of winter. And in the winter, I'll actually be writing another book about Professor Snape. There'll be essays, but they'll be written from a secular humanist perspective this time. And I'll be going to Las Vegas next summer to another Harry Potter convention. I'll be doing 2 one-hour lectures, one of which for the first time will be from a secular humanist perspective. So that should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Anyone else? Is that it? Brothers, yes.
I saw that you've been referred to as a gender fluid person, but I've also heard, for example, a presenter today introduced you and used the pronoun she on several occasions. So I was wondering if you sometimes use other pronouns, and overall, what is your experience of looking for and expressing your gender identity within the various religious communities that you've been participating in?
Well, that was actually one of the problems when I was a teenager. Was I loved wearing men's clothes. I loved it, and of course back then, unfortunately, it was first back then we didn't know gender fluid didn't even exist, that term yet, and we had the internet where a lot of people could talk about these ideas and explore them and express them. This was actually tangled up with the fact that I didn't like being a woman then when I was that age, because women were submissive and had shut up and what Paul said and all that junk there. And of course I'd been in a situation where it was very abusive, right? So the fact that my legitimate the fact that I was that I had that tendency was all mixed up in these other these other situations, so that made it very difficult to untangle it. It was only much later in life that it happened, and I was very happy, and it was a very peaceful process at that point. And the fact that I couldn't seem to help wearing ties and things like that, the evangelicals didn't like that. they in fact, one time the preacher wanted me to read a text, right? And actually, first of all, I said, doesn't it matter that I'm a girl? And I was like, oh, I forgot about that. Whoops. And he's like, no, it's good, And then I put on a dress, and he told me he wouldn't have let me do it if I, put something on like this, right? And I was very unhappy. And when I was younger, I thought I was ugly. There was a whole bunch of things tied up with that. And by the time when I was Orthodox, the fact is I lived as much like a lay monastic as I could. So you could kind of be gender neutral. You know what I mean? When you were like a lay monastic there, there were a lot of stories in the Desert Fathers of these, these female monks who dressed up like men in the desert. They could do it. You couldn't really do it, but they could do it. So I was in kind of that in-between sphere then. But when I started to really reject these ideas, these institutions, that was one of the first things I started to explore. It's like, men's underwear. Yay! It was awesome. You know, I just felt like, and the thing is, it felt like so much fun. And you know, I mean, I'm not trying to, you know, I mean, I have tons of friends who are transgender. In the Harry Potter fandom, there are lots. But me, it's more like I just like mixing things. I don't, you know, I don't want to like be a man. It's just more like this, you know, kind of in the middle, whatever, back and forth. So, but I found that incredibly liberating. That was one of the because you're defying something. You're doing something you're not supposed to do. And when I walked away from like the Orthodox Church, actually one of the first things that I did is I got my first ink. Right? I have like right here I have a skull and crossbones from Captain Harlock, which is a very popular anime series in the 70s, and it fought for hope and freedom and outsiders, you know. And it was so physical. I always lived in my head, you know. I always kind of felt detached a bit. So I'm like, you know, this is going to be something in the flesh, damn it, you know. It's like, that's it, you know, outsiders forever. And I never in my wildest dreams thought I would ever, you know, get like a tattoo. And well, it was the first of many. It was just the beginning, but it felt so good, you know, because it was a needle in your flesh and there's blood and it was awesome and it hurt, you know. You really meant it. It's like, you will not fuck with me anymore. You know what I mean? That's it. I stand my ground. I mean this absolutely, and there's no going back. Right? So, all of this, it was, again, it's just a very physical thing. And that was really liberating because in a lot of these traditions, there's this definite separation between the spirit and the body, right? The body is there, you have to take care of it, the temple of God, blah, 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 right? But, you know, it's going to be transformed and all that. It's not going to last forever. It's kind of like, you know, like body, you know, like a 0.1 or something. But now you know, all that is gone, and it feels so good. It's like it's okay to be a human being, right? I mean, I was halfway there because the fact is, of course, that the Orthodox is actually a lot more body positive, you know, because like the icons are physical things, and you would kiss them, you know. My mom was like, ah, she's kissing images. So, but she got used to it, even with Jesus, right? So, you know, and you would like, if someone died, you would venerate the body. You know, it was very important, it was very beautiful, and that was just one of the things, again, that was steering me towards this kind of very physical, humanistic love of humanity. Like this lovely young man over there, when I was at the non-conference, was, you know, doing a little camera thing, and he asked me, like, why are you an atheist? And I told him, because I love humanity. That's why I'm an atheist. There's really no other answer. So there. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Thank you so much. Is that it? We're all done now? Thank you so much. I appreciate it.